is R.D. Jones, and I'm the Executive Director of Clearly College Park, the Business and Industrial Development Authority for the City of College Park. I'd like to welcome you to the Clearly College Park podcast. Before we begin, I have a question for you. When was the College Park Post Office constructed? If you don't know the answer, please stay tuned to the end of the show. Today, our guest on Clearly College Park is Mr. Terrence Moore, who serves as the city manager of the City of College Park. Welcome, Terrence.
Good morning, Artie. Thank you for having me.
All right, no problem. So, Terrence, tell us a little bit about your background. Where are you from, your family, your matriculation, anything that you'd like for our guests to know about yourself.
Sure, I appreciate it, Artie, and thank you very much for having me. Been looking forward to being part of the podcast broadcast with Clearly College Park for a while, so pretty excited to be here. So a little bit about myself. I am actually a native of Chicago, Illinois, where I was born and grew up, having been raised in the inner city, South Side, having grown up with my grandmother, actually, who recently celebrated her 96th birthday.
Oh, congratulations.
So still here with us, and the predominance of my educational background began in Illinois, undergraduate and graduate degrees from the University of Illinois in economics and public administration, emphasis in public finance and city management. And interestingly enough, I began my local government career with the city of Chicago right after completing undergraduate school as an analyst with the city of Chicago. So right before graduate school, I was able to initiate my local government career. Interestingly enough, my local government career is pretty broad, and at College Park, it is actually my fourth city manager assignment consecutive. Been on board with the city of College Park since March 2013, so nearly 7 years of fairly productive service, I like to think. But prior to that, I had been a city manager in 3 other communities in 3 different states across the country, Florida, New Mexico, and West Virginia.
Okay.
The city management profession is an itinerant profession, meaning that if one makes the decision to embark upon that role and function, one must be prepared to be geographically flexible, and that is definitely the case in my experience and background to date. Likewise, it's been extremely rewarding, and I've definitely enjoyed the experience here in College Park, Georgia, for the time I've been in service.
Okay. So being in city management, was this something that you thought of when you were a young child that you wanted to be in city management? How did you come about actually getting involved and wanting to run a city?
Sure. That's a great question, and you make an excellent point in terms of running a city. And oftentimes I find myself explaining to different people, young and old, what the role and function of a city manager is. The city manager is actually the chief executive or chief administrative officer of local government, which means that is the number one appointed position for day-to-day operations. Think of the mayor and city council as the board of directors of a company. The city manager, in theory, if you will, highly educated, well-trained expert to run day-to-day operations of a local government. So to your question relative to the genesis of my interests, while in high school, I participated in what's called the City of Chicago's Mayor's Office of Employment and Training.
Okay.
And it was an opportunity for part-time employment throughout the summer.
Okay.
So upon graduating 8th grade, I was able to participate in this program. So each summer up until my senior year of high school, I was involved in this program where I tutored summer school. 15 hours a week, $3.35 an hour back in the 1980s. And part of this particular consideration or participation involved learning about local government operations.
Oh.
And interestingly enough, by the time I was a senior in high school, I wanted to explore a little bit more about it. So I was actually a pretty decent mathematician while in high school, and a number of guidance counselors were encouraging me to pursue engineering. Oftentimes, if a kid is interested in mathematics or demonstrates capabilities in that regard, Terrence, you must pursue engineering. And so I thought about civil engineering because of the nexus and relationship to cities and infrastructure, public works, et cetera, based on what I've learned in the aforementioned Mayor's Office of Employment and Training program. And so during my senior year of high school, I read a little bit about that, specifically civil engineering, and I came across an article published in 1948 by an organization known as the International City Managers Association, now known as the International City County Management Association. It was based in Chicago at the time.
Okay.
So over at the University of Chicago Library, I'm learning about city managers, what the role and function of it is. In this 1948 article, it talks about how city managers are much more than just infrastructure, civil engineering, et cetera. They have a background in finance, leadership, personnel, a lot of roles and functions in which one should have background and training to be qualified for that particular role. And I thought to myself, well, wow, this is interesting. This is more like it. And while a senior in high school, I was in advanced placement economics, which actually encouraged my undergraduate major, also minoring in mathematics and statistics. And at that point is when I decided I would be pursuing that particular opportunity. And oftentimes people would ask me the question, well, Terrence, how did you get interested in becoming a city manager as early as you did? First post in Sebastian, Florida back in 1999, still in your 20s. Well, because back in my senior year of high school, I actually became committed to pursuing that particular avenue and thus very serious about it. And so here I am. So that's a different type of response to that type of question. Oftentimes people may discover they have an interest in that regard as they are pursuing their career interests as they go along. But in my particular instance, it was fairly early on for the reasons I talked about. Senior in high school, hanging out at the University of Chicago Library, reading an article 40 years before.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, I know that being a city manager and just working in government in general, especially being an executive, there's a lot of stress and everything that you go through.
No question about it.
But let's back up. Let's go back to your childhood. Let's go back to you being, growing up in Chicago.
Yes.
You said the South Side.
Yes.
Every city has a South Side.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your siblings and just growing up and how you were able to, your interaction with them, because we want to look into the personal side of Terrence also, not just what we see Monday through Friday with the suits and ties.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. And I'm actually humbled by my initial background.
Mm-hmm.
And it was definitely a what's the word I would describe it as? It is a humble beginnings, if you will, so to speak, because as I articulated a little while ago, the principal head of our household was my grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
So Granny was like my mother.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was very young when she began having children. She had a total of 4 of us. So I'm the eldest of 4 children that she had, and it was a small place, inner city, south side of Chicago, so aunts, uncles, that whole bit living together. And oftentimes the question would come up, well, Terrence, you did not have a father at all. And I said, actually, I did not. And whenever I share that background, people tend to get nervous and bent out of shape for me. And I would say to myself or to the person in question, hey, there's nothing to be concerned about, because at an early age, I was simply able to be thankful for whomever was in my life, in this case, my grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
Did not have a lot. It was really tight on a consistent basis, but she was always very helpful, always very supportive, and that, quite frankly, encouraged me to do well, stay out of trouble. So despite the propensity for trouble in the environment in which I grew up, I've always did extremely well in school, was actually a pretty good athlete as well, believe it or not, and most people have a tough time qualifying the two. Either you're an intellectual or you're an athlete. Well, darn it, I tried to be both, quite frankly, a Renaissance person early on, being involved in a number of extracurricular activities, and that was a great way to steer away from trouble.
Right.
Because in that environment, there was a great deal of propensity for trouble, quite frankly. Gang violence, it was rather tough. But with education and having a good outlook and having people supportive of you, regardless of background and circumstance, I was able to see the sunshine everywhere, and thus I had a good experience overall.
Good.
Of course, there were some tough times, being harassed by gangbangers, beat up, robbed, that sort of thing. But interestingly enough, it was still a good experience overall because of my personal outlook, having done well in school and taking advantage of the various extracurricular activities, athletics being part of the math team, and stay busy with it all. And thus, there was really not time for any opportunity to get into trouble.
Right.
And for that reason, I've always been thankful.
Okay. Well, cool. So you've been a city manager in 4 different cities. What would you say was your most proudest accomplishment, and with what city?
So honestly, Artie, there aren't any one specific set of accomplishments I'm proud of. There are many accomplishments in which I'm proud of. I will say that I do enjoy seeing major capital projects come to fruition. You and I and our colleagues on the executive team, we are currently celebrating the recent opening of the Gateway Center Arena at College Park. Proud accomplishment. And that's a really unique outcome because in metropolitan Atlanta, that's probably an opportunity that could not be achieved in other environments. Simply because the city of College Park enjoys a number of intergovernmental agreements with the city of Atlanta.
Right.
Because of the presence of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport in our community, we have a revenue sharing agreement regarding the rental car tax. And with the reauthorization of that back in 2017 for another 30 years, the city of College Park is able to enjoy a revenue source unavailable to other communities outside of College Park in Atlanta to implement a number of capital projects. And this is the way we were able to get that achieved. So I would highlight the Gateway Center Arena at College Park simply because of the creative approach in terms of financing, our solid working relationship with the city of Atlanta in terms of the revenue sharing outcome, and thus not an adverse impact to permanent residents who are taxpayers here in College Park. I do appreciate that a great deal. Other major capital projects were City Hall projects in both Sebastian, Florida, Las Cruces, New Mexico, while city manager in those communities,
Right.
and some other major initiatives along those lines as well. Those were your traditional bond issuance approach, general obligation bond-backed projects and programs. However, in the case of the Gateway Center Arena at College Park, because of the unique financial arrangement associated therein, not impacting or compromising taxpayers in the community as a whole, that stands out as a meaningful capital project.
Okay. Well, I know two of your proudest accomplishments are your boys. Tell us a little bit about them, and as far as their, I know one's in college now.
Actually, he's about to start, and I'll be happy to talk about that.
Yeah.
So you're referring to Parker. So two sons, Parker 17,
Yes.
Grant 13. So Parker actually just received an early admission to Texas A&M Honors College.
Wow.
Double majoring in economics and political science. I appreciate the economics side because he's taken after the old man a little
Yeah,
bit.
exactly.
So that was an outcome that was achieved just last week. I've actually shared that with other people I care for, family members, et cetera.
Congratulations.
Thank you. A lot of congratulations in that regard. And he has an opportunity to pursue other admissions to other prestigious universities as well. But he's pretty sold on Texas A&M.
Okay.
And with the Honors College designation, there'll become financial opportunities for him to matriculate quite well. Interestingly enough, his little brother Grant, he is performing a semester here with us at Fulton Leadership Academy.
Okay.
He just became accepted into a pre-high school program to prepare him for Eaton High School in Fort Worth, Texas, to begin in January.
Wow.
So he'll be able to get started to enter the same school in which Parker's about to graduate. So very proud of both of them. You've seen them around quite a bit. I think you've interacted with them. They thought you were a pretty cool guy, and they enjoy coming down to your office anytime they're around. We'll sit them down and visit with you, and you've had a good rapport with kids. And I like to try to have fun with yours as well whenever I do see him, particularly Tyson. He'll be more fun when he gets older.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. He's a handful now. And
I know
he'll
that.
probably be a more
7,
of a-
8 years old.
7 years old.
7 years old, yes.
Yes, yes.
So he'll be cool when he's like 13. We'll really get into it with him.
Right, right. Okay. Well, you talked about capital projects that you're proud of, and you've worked with many different communities. Tell me, how do you have the time to be able to balance professional life and personal life? What I find being, I guess, working in government, it's almost like I have to kind of intertwine the two together to be able to spend a decent amount of time with my family by having them at my job sometimes, or having them involved in functions. So tell me about your experience.
Pretty consistent what you just outlined, Artie. Of course, we do owe it to ourselves to spend time with our children, my two sons, your children. Outside of the workplace, we always are working to engage a work-life balance, so to speak. That is a challenge for any executive, regardless of sector. And of course, I've seen you interacting with your kids in the workplace at different functions, events, et cetera. I do exactly the same. And we just talked a little bit about some of the experiences you and I've shared together with our kids coming into the workplace. I typically at City Hall on Saturdays. Fortunately, Grant, at 13, he still enjoys hanging out with the old man.
Right.
He always comes over with me and gets homework done. We work together and get matters squared away in that regard. Of course, we've enjoyed ourselves being here in metropolitan Atlanta with the world-class offerings of professional athletics, events, engagements, shows, programs, whatever the case may be. In the case of a College Park, you and I and other family men have had really neat opportunities given what we've been able to accomplish. The celebration of the Gateway Center Arena at College Park, for example. Thursday, November 7th, Friday, November 8th, Saturday, November 9th. a number of activities and events. We had our family members with us. We've had our sons with them. You've had your kids. And those are opportunities that young people who may not be connected to a Terrence Moore or an Artie Jones may not have available. In fact, in the case of my son Grant, I would encourage him to bring a couple of his friends and buddies so that they can have that experience as well. So given the roles and responsibilities we enjoy, number one, given what we've been able to accomplish as a municipal corporation, number two, it's a great deal of opportunity for positive and lasting exposure for young people, our children, their friends, etc., that otherwise would not be possible. So my advice to parents, if they have an employment opportunity that provides a great deal of exposure for their children on a positive and productive basis that would otherwise not have the opportunity to do so, that's a tremendous opportunity for work-life balance, and that's been my consistent experience as a result of the city management profession.
All right, great. Being in the Atlanta metropolitan area provides a lot of. I was attracted to it because of the diversity.
Sure, likewise.
And all of the various activities that was available to my family.
Likewise, yes.
And especially College Park, you know, the entire reason behind the Clearly College Park podcast is our ability to be able to talk about what College Park actually is.
Yes, sir.
And not listen to the stories or sometimes those negative perceptions out there. But it seems to me that College Park is just it's a beautiful little town where 2,600 planes fly overhead on a daily basis.
Big city and small town all at once.
Yeah,
that's the way I like to describe it.
Yeah. So, and you were talking about exposure that you received when you were in high school from, I guess, the 8th grade, when you graduated from the 8th grade and being exposed to government, and all of a sudden you're in government, and then your son, with you exposing him over the years, all of a sudden he's going to matriculate and going to be dealing with political science and at Texas. The exposure that I think that people receive here in College Park, I think, is second to none, especially if you're of a diverse background.
Sure, of course.
But to me, it seems to be a community that's very inviting for everyone, and we heard a lot of that on last night during the council meeting.
Of course.
So talk to me a little bit about the positives about College Park and try to clear up some of those misperceptions that you've experienced.
And I appreciate that. That's always a great question. We've talked about this during executive team meetings a number of times, you, myself, and your colleagues who are the department directors. So I like to think about fall of 2012. I'm city manager of Morgantown, West Virginia, home of West Virginia University, having a pretty decent experience up there for a couple years. So I was contacted by the search firm representing College Park, Georgia, looking to secure interests on part of city management professionals regarding the College Park opportunity. And at initial glance, I have to admit, I was a little concerned. I was a little concerned because of some of the aforementioned misperceptions you talk about with respect to crime, with respect to nonsense, quite frankly, as it turns out. But after spending time with the executive search firm, performing my homework regarding this particular opportunity, I thought to myself, well, wow, this is fantastic because, Terrence, this would be your 4th city manager appointment consecutive, but it would be your first in a primary market community, major metropolitan Atlanta community inside the perimeter. Not only that, but the notable aspects of College Park, the presence of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport in our community, Woodward Academy, the 2nd largest independent preparatory school in the entire United States, but the largest in the continental United States in terms of preparatory schools, the United States Southern Regional Headquarters of the Federal Aviation Administration, in which the city of College Park owns the facility, so we spend a great deal of time, as you know, offering leadership and guidance to support that operation. Chick-fil-A corporate headquarters, for instance. You have all these tremendous notable aspects that contribute a great deal to the socioeconomic vitality of metropolitan Atlanta. These notable aspects, however, over the years had been associated with being Atlanta. We've been working together over the last number of years in College Park to secure that recognition across the board. And interestingly enough, going back to 2012 when I was being recruited for the opportunity, I was able to dig deep and understand what College Park truly is. And once that was accomplished, I became extremely excited about the opportunity. And so it made a great deal of sense because despite the relatively small permanent residency, you have this large daily daytime population because of the aforementioned presence. You have an adjusted commuter population inside the perimeter that contributes greatly to the economic well-being of the overall environment, and therefore we've been quite busy. Case in point, fast forward to 2019. When we came on board, I came on board at the beginning of 2013. You came on board at the end of 2013. Who would have ever thought there would be 2 professional sports franchises in College Park, Georgia?
Right.
Well, here we are. Given what I just talked about regarding the financial capabilities with respect to the Gateway Center Arena at College Park, what we've been able to achieve in that regard, we've worked well together to now have on board the Atlanta Dream of the Women's National Basketball Association, and of course, College Park Skyhawks, inaugural game coming up in 2 days, of the Atlanta Hawks Basketball Club. And again, not many opportunities to that effect can be offered in other communities. And so College Park has a lot to be proud of, a lot more to capitalize on above and beyond my initial observations. And therefore, we have a great deal to tell as far as what we truly are as a community, what we offer, and we are a major presence in metropolitan Atlanta. Not many communities can say the same. We have a lot to be proud of.
Right. We've talked about our most recent accomplishments being the arena and numerous hotels going up around the Gateway Center. How do you feel about the new Airport City project that's on the horizon?
The Airport City is extremely exciting for City of College Park. A big part of your life these days, a big part of the lives of us professionally who work closely with you, R.D. Jones. Mayor Longino articulated quite well, and that is the largest single development opportunity south of Buckhead. Buckhead being on the north side of Atlanta, we're all familiar with Buckhead. So this is beyond a burgeoning market for metropolitan Atlanta and the Airport City environment. We talk about the mixed-use residential, commercial activity. It will simply contribute to all what we've been able to accomplish. But quite frankly, as a result of the execution of the Airport City plan, College Park will be a next-level community as a result. And it will offer responsiveness to the demand to be inside the perimeter. Right now, you have a lot of property values ascending upward in the upper limits of College Park, Georgia, and therefore, Airport City will contribute to that environment in terms of responding to the marketplace. So we're all excited about it. Again, the complement of residential, commercial, mixed-use engagements, some additional hospitality as a result of its proximity to the Georgia National Convention Center, Gateway Center Arena at College Park campus, and therefore we'll be able to achieve across the board. It's a next step in terms of solid community and economic development, something to look forward to, and we're excited across the board.
Okay. So what do you feel is a major threat to the growth of College Park? And it seems like we're headed up, we're ascending up and everything, but what do you see as a major obstacle? What do we need to continue to do better? And what potential, like I said, threats do you think are out there?
Sure. Of course, we always have to be concerned about the presence of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta National Airport. So the fact that we spend a great deal of time engaging with the leadership with quarterly meetings, you participate in those, I participate in those, a lot of issues and concerns that would likewise normally be a challenge isn't so. Because, of course, they are more transparent these days relative to communicating their plans regarding capital improvements, infrastructure development, hotel construction development, and other collaborative considerations across the board. So the presence of Hartsfield-Jackson was perhaps once upon a time a big obstacle because, of course, with the extension of the 5th runway 20 years ago, neighborhoods had been taken out. Neighborhoods had been removed. People were relocated. Neighborhoods that previously existed no longer exist. Well, as it turns out, a number of people were concerned about a similar possibility regarding the 6th runway. Because of the aforementioned engaging relationship with the City of Atlanta Department of Aviation, we've been able to offer some clarification regarding the facts that that's not as immediate as people initially thought, and therefore the City of College Park is able to proceed forward with this community and economic development synergy and direction. So that and the good work having been achieved regarding the aforementioned intergovernmental agreements, back in 2014, not long after you came on board, the city became successful in acquiring a number of acres from the City of Atlanta Department of Aviation that was previously allotted for the expansion of taxiway and runway infrastructure. That is the basis of Airport City. Again, going back to that solid working relationship with the City of Atlanta, the Department of Aviation, and all others involved, many of those concerns have been alleviated. So to your point, I think we're moving in a steadfast direction, and we look forward to outcomes being favorable. And again, a lot to be excited about, much to be proud of.
Okay. Well, for our viewers, if they're interested in becoming more involved with the city government in, I guess, development projects or just being volunteer, maybe at the arena, how would they go about doing that?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, attendance at the Mayor and City Council meetings is of paramount importance. For any organization or any community, learning what's happening with respect to your local government, attending as many public meetings as one possibly can. That's probably the formal basis. And in the case of College Park, with the presence of the Georgia National Convention Center, the Gateway Center Arena, other notable aspects that I talked a little about earlier, a number of public meetings are held in that regard. Given your involvement as Director of Economic Development and Executive Director of Clearly College Park, the BIDA meetings are open to the public.
Okay.
And Mayor and City Council make appointments to the Board of Directors for the Business and Industrial Development Authority. That's an opportunity for people to become involved and likewise provide impactful leadership and guidance to help continue the evolution of College Park as a community. So first and foremost, that is the way to go formally. Informally, I've had people contact my office directly, contact Terrence Moore, Office of the City Manager, and ask about specific opportunities in which he or she can become involved. Older people, young people, across the board, and we would end up directing them accordingly. I think the City of College Park does a good job in terms of being, A, transparent regarding said opportunities, and B, becoming accessible. You can easily contact that of the elected officials fairly well. Right. You're accessible. I'm very accessible. So by virtue of our philosophy and our steadfast presence in those regards, we're pretty easy to deal with, and therefore many opportunities, in fact, become available.
Yeah, because I know there's been a number of people that have served in internships with your office and
Sure,
have been
and
with my
yours
office
as well.
also.
That's right.
Yeah, so, okay, cool. Well, in closing, what would you like to leave our viewers with today?
College Park has been a wonderful opportunity, not only to serve as a city manager, but I've been a resident of College Park their entire time within a historic district. As I think you know, you and I do not live too far away from one another. I think we've generally had a good experience living in the community.
Definitely.
And property values have ascended a great deal. Much of it is a function of the good work that's being executed by the City of College Park, and much is being done to clarify the reputation of the community, because again, much of that, the vast majority of the misinformation was in fact just that, misnomers regarding the community. Much of it was a function of not knowing what the corporate limit boundaries were.
Right.
And my advice to any individual, man, woman, girl, boy, regarding College Park is to know the facts regarding the community. That was my experience coming on board back in early 2013 via the executive search process in late 2012. I did my homework, and I discovered that this is a wonderful opportunity, both personally, professionally, and I have not been disappointed in any way. Given what we're involved in, given what I talked about in terms of the notable aspects of the community, the size and scope of the municipal operation, second to none in terms of other communities in metropolitan Atlanta, we are a tremendous community, and therefore much work to still accomplish, but much work in which we are definitely proud to have been part of. And it's a major presence in metropolitan Atlanta for all the right reasons. And for that, I'm grateful. So thank you.
Okay. Well, Terrence, thank you for coming and speaking to our guests of Clearly College Park. We're thankful for all that you do for the city of College Park and the South Metro area.
Thank you, Artie. To you as well.
All right. Well, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you all.
All right.
Take care.
All right. Thank you. And that is the Clearly College Park podcast. And now for the Clearly College Park podcast fact. The question was, when was the College Park post office constructed? Well, it was actually constructed in 1892 on Main Street in downtown College Park. I'd like to thank all of our guests for tuning in today. And remember, Clearly College Park is where you will land in plain sight.